Hey there, welcome back to another episode of the Hope Sessions podcast, where every week we want to give you encouragement through different means such as testimonies, dialogues with guests, along with diving into the scriptures and exploring the incredible life transforming truths inside it. So, with all that being said, here's another episode for you to tune into and listen to. God bless. Enjoy the episode. Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Hope Sessions podcast with me, Jerry D. And today I've got a dear friend who is a returning guest who is, how would I say this now? So his dad, Pastor Stephen, has been on the podcast 3 times. Now it's Ronan's third time on the podcast. So there's a bit of a race going on there. I'm pretty sure that my emails are going to be blowing up after this podcast, just with Ronan and his dad sending me a list of topics that they want to come on the podcast for. So there's going to be a bit of a banter there, I assume and I hope. But if not, that's totally fine. But I do want to say this about Ronan. Ronan is a returning guest, but he's one of my dearest friends, someone who I serve alongside in ministry, someone who has played an influential part in some of my spoken word videos, the online experience that happened during COVID. And I just love what I love about this guy is his tenderness to the things of God. Like he would, if there's something that Ronan doesn't understand or maybe doesn't have an interest in, like for instance, for me, I'm telling him all about spoken word, and he doesn't look at me as if I have four heads. He looks at me in a way where he wants to listen and learn, and that's what I really appreciate about this guy. So today we're going to dive into a topic where we're going to talk about the impact of godly parents. And why I say that is because this is a man who respects his parents, he honors them, and you see the impact of his parents in his life right now, which is why I wanted to have him on. But Breezy, other people call you Ronan, I get the privilege of calling you Breezy. My man, welcome back to the podcast. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Thank you for having me again. And I hope this isn't my last time too, and I can beat my dad and make it for the fourth time. But
Wow.
we'll
So,
see.
so that's what the podcast has come down to now. It's not
Yeah,
even
yeah.
about imparting encouragement. It's now I want to beat my
No,
dad.
no, it's just about beating my dad. Yeah. I want to go for five times and then just end
Wow.
his fourth time.
Wow. And when your dad listens to this, I'm sure he's going to take you in for a counseling session.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. In his office in the church.
Wow. But man, do you know, we're going to dive into it. And the reason why I wanted to have this podcast is because really want this to be able to give parents some hope. It sounds cliche, but parenting in today's age is quite difficult. And I'm not a parent, so I'm not speaking from experience, but I know because we're in youth ministry and we see the challenges of what the youth are dealing with on a daily basis. And just in a day and age where we're living, where to be a Christian is one of the craziest things in the world. You're looked at as if you have 10 heads. And I can only imagine the challenges of parents when they're sending their kids to school, when they're trying to impart godly wisdom, godly influence into their life, and then they're going to school and being taught different things. But you know, it sounds simple to say this, but parents are vitally important. And let me state the obvious from a biological perspective, if your parents didn't find each other, you wouldn't be here today.
Exactly.
Instead of giving you some mad spiritual, that's the reality, man. God brought both
Yeah.
your parents together, and a result of their love is you. You were one of their
Mhm.
offspring, you know. And when you bring a kid into the world, there's so much responsibility that I'm sure your parent and any parents, including my own parents, feel the weight of that responsibility of having to care for you, literally feed you, clothe you, burp you when you were having your bottle of milk, and just very practical stuff that I think sometimes gets a bit overlooked. And I
Yeah.
want to read 2 verses, man, on the topic of parenting with children with parents, and we're going to dive into it then. The first one is in Ephesians chapter 6, verses 1 to 3. It says the following: Children, obey your parents because you belong to the Lord, for this is the right thing to do. Honor your father and mother. This is the first commandment with a promise. If you honor your father and mother, things will go well for you and you will have a long life on earth. And the second one I want to read is from Proverbs, is it 8? Oh, wait, no, 22:6. Yes, 22:6. It says the following: Direct your children onto the right path, and when they are older, they will not leave it. And just to think of those verses alone, man, that there's a promise when you honor your parents.
Yeah,
Like people think, oh, obey your parents, oh, whatever, but it's so silly. But you don't know how they annoy me, and I'm just thinking you don't know how they provide for you.
exactly.
Do you know what I mean? Like literally,
Exactly.
the roof you're sitting under right now is your parents' roof. Do you know
Yeah.
the clothes you're wearing right now, although it's probably a result of you working, it's also a result
Hmm.
of your parents raising you to get you to a position where you could get a job to make the money to put the clothes
Yeah,
on your back. Do you know? And I
exactly.
wanna ask a two-part question, man. I want to ask you two perspectives. So when you were growing up, what was it like? What was it like with your parents? But also, what were you like? Did you receive their instruction? Did you receive their encouragement well, or were you a little bit rebellious towards taking on board what they were saying?
Yeah. Um, so yeah, to answer that, um, growing up, yeah, I would like, especially when I was younger, I think I respected them a lot more than sometimes I did in my teenage years,
Sure.
or yeah, just saw it a different way as I got older. That sometimes felt like, oh, they're just being like way too strict and just stuff like that. But yeah, growing up, like when I was in primary school and stuff like that, they would always like read the Bible to us, and yeah, like they'd make time in the evenings before we went to bed that we'd sit down as a family, or sometimes just my dad or my mom and myself and my sister Kirsty, we would sit on the sofa with them, and then they had like a children's Bible story. So they would read that to us, or if we were in our bedrooms too, they'd read it up there as well. And then we'd always pray with them as well. So even, yeah, from a young age, my parents, I didn't even realize it, but they were teaching me like a really important thing to have in life is to open God's word and then to also talk to him too.
Mm.
And yeah, like they taught me, yeah, a lot of the Bible stories that, yeah, I still remember to this day. And like, like David and Goliath or Joshua. And I was gonna call it the big wall because that's from Veggie Tales, but it's Joshua and the Battle of Jericho, Jonah and the whale, or the big fish,
Mm.
for those who don't think it was a whale, but I think it was a whale, but anyway.
Yeah,
But yeah, yeah, just stuff like that. So yeah, from my young age, they would encourage me too, and yeah, like I said, pray with me. And then they also, yeah, they would introduce me to Jesus too. Like they told me about him. And then from a young age, they asked me if I wanted to give my life to him. So I think I was like 5 when I gave my life to Jesus. So even that was amazing.
wow.
And I was very blessed to have Christian parents who brought me to church every Sunday, who brought me to Sunday school. And yeah, they would always encourage me too. I was a very like fearful child too. Like I would have a lot of fear growing up. I would worry a lot. And even when like my parents left me, or like sometimes when they took me to Sunday school, or if my mom left me in the car, I'd start to like worry
Okay.
that something would happen to them or I wouldn't be able to find them. And I just start to get really fearful and then just start to cry. But yeah, they would always like comfort me and encourage me. And then yeah, they would always kind of point me back to what God says about me and like God's promises to me. Like I don't have to be afraid because He is with me. And my mom encouraged me with something too. She would say, like, nothing happens unless God allows it to happen. Too,
Mm.
and that really encouraged me. And they would like even point me to the book of Joshua. And like one time when it was getting really out of hand, they were like, go and read the book of Joshua and just see what like how God helped Joshua when he was fearful. So even stuff like that, that really encouraged me.
Wow.
But then also, yeah, there was rules growing up in our house too. Like we weren't allowed to watch like certain movies until we were a certain age. So
Sure.
even at times I found that really strict, but
Mm.
I see it now as like they were protecting us, like just from the worldly influence too,
Yeah.
which is
Wow.
really good. And even like, yeah, they held back a lot with giving me a phone. And
Sure.
then when I got a phone, it was just like a brick phone, and then I got an iPod eventually,
Yeah.
and then, but yeah, I think like one of the reasons, maybe this is wrong too, that they gave me an iPod was so I could actually keep in contact with like my cousins who are Christians or like friends that I made at Avoca and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then also another rule too, I was never allowed to bring my phone in my room, which was great because now I know the reason for that, which was really good.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was a few things that I just found really strict, especially when I was like in secondary school or even like when like in secondary school, some of my friends would be going to like the discos and stuff like that, or then they'd start going out too. But like there were times that I wish that I could have gone, but I knew like there's no point in even asking
Yeah.
because there's no way my parents will let me go. So even then, I think that's really good too because it protected me from a lot of things, which is amazing. It kept me in church, and then they'd always like yeah, I struggled with youth at the start because I just struggled to make friends, especially when I joined in first year. All my friends were still kind of in preteens,
Yeah.
so I was just kind of alone. But at times when I didn't want to go to youth, they would still push me to go to youth, and I didn't like that at all. But now I'm thankful to them for doing that because youth helped me massively and then, yeah, they would just push me to go. They'd always find a way to bring me in, or yeah, they'd find a way to even like if I was like stuck for money or stuff like that, they'd give me money so I could go out and hang out with people from the church and
Yeah.
spend time with them. And I've built friendships because of that. I've got involved in ministry from that. And yeah, it's just been amazing the fact of the parents and their effect on my life too, and my walk with God. So I
Yeah.
hope that covered that question.
Yeah, man, it did. There's two things you touched on, and I want to, I suppose, just reiterate them. And the first one you said, which is it's so common when you grow up under your parents' care, it's rules, restrictions, and
Mm.
we think they're barriers, but as you said so wonderfully, you said it yourself, man, that they were actually protecting you
Yeah.
in your formative years, allowing you to not be exposed to should I say detrimental stuff, dangerous stuff, difficult stuff, till you get to
Mhm.
the age yourself where you're mature enough in yourself and in your walk with the Lord where you can actually face these issues head on, so that
Yeah.
you weren't exposed to a lot of the world of the internet at such a young age, which is unfortunate.
Hmm.
The reality of a lot of kids nowadays, you're given an iPod as soon as you can walk, kind of a thing. And
Yeah.
then the second one you said, man, and I smiled when you said it because I've actually seen the impact of it in my own nephew Joshua, right? So you said that your parents would sit down with you and your sister Kirsty and read Bible stories.
Hmm.
And at the time, I'm sure you just thought, sure, lovely old stories. Yeah, story time with the parents and bedtime then, kind of thing. But just to see the
Yeah.
impact that led you to giving your life to Jesus, that you got
Hmm.
to it through those stories and the stance your parents made to incorporate Bible reading stories into your life from a young age led you to be finding Jesus for yourself.
Yeah.
And just to think of
Exactly.
Joshua, because my nephew Joshua is going to hold on, he's 20.
You're a
So
great
yeah,
uncle, Jerry, remembering your
he's a he's a
nephew's
he's a
age.
COVID baby, so he's going to be four
Yeah,
on the 2nd of June. Yeah, four on the 2nd of June. I'm glad I cleared that up because I might get a text from Danny saying you
yeah.
don't even know your nephew's age. But
Yeah.
Danny and Aoife would read Bible stories with Joshua every night, and then they would pray with him, and they'll ask him, what do you want to pray for? And he'll name off like 50 people,
Hmm.
because his friends, the cat that he's seen that day walking down the street, or the bird that flew into their window, and it's just great
Yeah.
to see he's just aware of a lot of this stuff. And I remember Aoife told me about a month ago, it was a Wednesday night after service, I'll never forget it. And she said that Joshua, tonight, when she was reading the story about Jesus coming into the boat,
Hmm.
and we know the story so well, we just think, oh yeah, lovely, yeah, he stands in the boat, haha, lovely, lovely. But Joshua turned around to Aoife and said, I want to ask Jesus into my heart to be with me forever.
Wow.
and he gave his life to Jesus, man, just because of a result of Bible stories. Like when Joshua goes to church, he loves the worship, he loves kind of clapping, and he wants to do the drums, and he's already got such an appetite for the things of God at the age of
hmm
4, from a
Yeah.
simple act of Danny and Aoife as parents, like your parents, just determining in their heart, no, we're Christians, so we're going to
hmm
live this life the Jesus way, where we're going to incorporate prayer. Bible reading stories, just to think of a 4-year-old. Now, Joshua won't is obviously not aware of the ramifications of that decision, that he's eternally secure, that Jesus loves him, is holding him in his hand. But as he grows up, that impact of his parents will carry him the whole way. And we've read it in
Yeah.
Proverbs 22:6, man, when your parents, when they lead the kids along the right path, that when they're
hmm
older, they will not depart from it. And you're a fruit, and your sister is a fruit of that prayer, man. You're both now
Yeah.
adults. And as you're in your adult life, starting out your adult life, you're starting it out with Jesus. That's, I've
hmm
no doubt, that's what your parents have always wanted from a young age when they brought you both into this world. And I believe the same will happen for Caleb and Jonathan, because you all have that tenderness and that respect for your parents, but also for the things of God. You're all in church more time, like Wednesdays, Fridays, Sundays. I know it's probably part of your dad being one of the associate pastors in our church, and it's incredible just to see the stance that they've made and the impact of that stance.
Yeah.
And I'm sure at
Yeah.
times it was probably frustrating for them when they were reading Bible stories, and maybe you weren't so responsive at times, or you were just tired or moody, or oh, I don't want to read this story tonight, But yet to see now
Yeah.
that being a man who's involved in youth ministry, worship ministry, the sound ministry in church, and I just think it's incredible just to see that. But then I want to ask,
hmm
so you've answered it when you were growing up, but now
hmm
as I suppose, as an adult, right? Teenagers, drifting out your teenage years into your adult life, how has your relationship with your parents, I suppose, evolved or changed, or how do you look up to your parents now? Now that you're an adult, and to see the impact from a young age, and that impact is still very much there now today.
Yeah. I think yeah, I think especially yeah, I think I've become not that I was never not close with my parents, but I've become like closer in a different way.
Yeah,
Like they become like they were always huge impacts in my life, but even more so now and especially my dad, like we've become really good friends too, which
mm,
is really nice. Like he's someone I can always count like talk to anytime like I have a problem or anything like that. And he just, yeah, he helps me in so many areas. He helps me with worship, sound, theology, my relationships. Yeah, it's a huge impact. And yeah, even like the difference now is I think, yeah, um, it's kind of like now they're kind of teaching me like when I was younger how I should live or what's an important like they were trying to instill in me like important things like it's important to work hard, it's important to study, like which is now carried through and is helping me now in my job or even to get a job is
yeah,
because of what my parents taught me when
yeah,
I was younger, even like what my parents taught me about the importance of reading God's word and how you actually need it every day just to go through life and to navigate through so many things. You need it. It's an essential to go
yeah,
through life and then also even talking to him too and like learning about him and yeah, journeying with him too is just an essential part of life, which is something they've taught me. Even like from when I was younger to now, even ministry, I know like most of it was never like any of my business, so why would they tell me? But they were sharing one time that like a lot of the time they would actually not share with us about things that were going on in ministry because ministry can be really difficult
yeah,
and like some of the things they went through, like it could taint your view of ministry, or why would you ever want to go into it if this is what ministry is like?
sure.
But now, as I'm navigating through ministry life, and some of the like some issues have popped up for me in the past, or
Mm,
it's because you're working with people too, and people aren't perfect.
yeah,
So you're always gonna have that in ministry. So even like with that, my dad has helped me a lot with that. And like I've even learning about some of the things like, wow, this actually happened. like in ministry, like some of the things like I was like, wow, I always viewed ministry as like this perfect thing growing up, like nothing ever went wrong, or even like growing up too, I thought like as soon as I become a parent or an adult, all my problems will disappear somehow. I won't carry my insecurities into adulthood or raising kids or getting married and stuff like that. So even now it's yeah, it was kind of weird at the start to see that some of the things that I went through or I'm going through, my dad went through the same things or my mom too, which was just weird to me because you just have like this perfect picture of them, like they have no problems
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So yeah, that's definitely one of the things that's different. It's, yeah, especially ministry life and even like yeah, worship is another thing too with my dad. Like he's just taught me yeah, even like good things to do in worship or the importance of worship. And even, yeah, they used to like sing with us growing up too, like children's worship songs too.
Yeah.
And yeah, even seeing how my dad led worship growing up and even now, like still seeing my dad leading worship has had a huge impact on me and even how I do worship and how I approach it.
Yeah.
So yeah, they've helped me with so many things. So yeah, hopefully that answered the question, or if not,
No, it really does. And you know, I suppose as I was listening, man, there was something that came to my mind, and it was when you're younger, you don't want to live with your parents necessarily. A lot of people, like when they're young, they
hmm
dread being around their parents, or you know, when their parents will say something in front of them, say, "Oh my gosh, you're embarrassing me, stop." You know, this kind of childish attitude. But it's awesome to see as you're sharing that it's clear that, you know, like NF the rapper says, the older I get, the more family is everything.
yeah,
You know, and because you're mature now, like not saying you were immature then, you were, we were all immature. I'll go ahead
hmm
and shame it, you know, but like it's mad because I'm the same man. Like for me, apart from Vinny, my girlfriend, right, and I'm sure you say the same with Tasha, right? Like the two closest people in my life is my mom and my dad,
hmm
you know, and I'm close with them both for very different reasons. I can
yeah,
talk to dad about men stuff, call it what
hmm
it is. That's the reality. I'm not gonna talk to my mom about men stuff because she's a woman. Thankfully.
yeah,
And then I talk to my mom about like, you know, my mom would be very nurturing and very caring and, you know, like a woman, you know, whereas my dad
hmm
would be very about like providing and working and leading, you know. So there's difference
hmm
in the relationships, but I love the closeness that they both have, you know. And
yeah,
like, what is it like for you, man, to lead, to be on a worship team with your dad and and also your sister there as well? Like, cause
hmm
when I see you guys on stage, I always think it's actually awesome to see that.
yeah. It's definitely, um, yeah, I really enjoy it, and yeah, I think it's a huge privilege, and I think it's really nice that I get to do worship with him and be under him and play with him, and then
Mm,
also learn from him, like to see how he would lead a worship team or how he approaches worship, like even the way he like would approach like song choice or how he leads the congregation in worship too, which
mm,
is something, yeah, I just see it as a huge privilege and I love doing it with them too.
yeah.
And then even like sometimes like I do forget to that like we're not at home. So like sometimes like I have no shame in saying like no to him or like no, that's not how the song goes. We should do it this way. Like you're doing it wrong.
Mm.
Like stuff like that. Or if like he comes with a suggestion, and if I don't particularly agree with that suggestion, even like in front of the whole worship team, I'll be like, no, just stuff like that. Because yeah, it would just be like what we do at home sometimes because even like during COVID, we would use a recording of worship and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Even like, and then I would help him with the editing side of it too. So there's plenty of like disagreements and like, no, Dad, you have to do it this way. You can only do it this way. And then he'd be like, no, I think you can do it this way too. So it's just like that. Sometimes I forget that I'm not at home and that. yeah, other people see him as a pastor. So they're like, whoa, he just said no to him, but I see him as my dad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
And like with that, then, because I kind of find that a little bit humorous, like that you would say
Yeah.
no, but it's not a disrespectful no. It's just
No,
it's
no.
part of working in a team, and everyone has different
Yeah.
opinions, different ways of doing things, and I suppose when like is it weird for you to kind of when you say no to your dad, do you kind of check yourself and go, was I wrong to say that, or is it now to the point where you're so used to doing it that it's no, I'm just doing it just to better us as we lead the worship team or do a certain song,
Yeah.
you know.
I never like I think it's like sometimes after I think, oh, like I just in the moment I forget that I'm actually in church.
Mm,
And like, like sometimes like when a pastor tells you to do something, most of the time you don't really say no, or
sure.
you don't explain to them why that's a bad idea and that they should do it a different way.
Yeah.
So I think that's sometimes I forget that. But like I did, like I've asked him about it too, and he's like, no, like I never see it a disrespect or you're dishonoring me because you do honor me and like the way you live honors me and that like yeah,
Wow.
just all of that. Like yeah, so he never sees it as dishonor. He just thinks it's funny too.
Yeah.
So I'll never forget it. Like one time, I think we were in like a broadcast meeting and he suggested something that we do and I just went no. And then like the whole room just fell silent and like, oh my goodness. And then when we were at home, we were just laughing about it at dinner because I was like, I just forgot I was in a broadcast meeting and you're a pastor and you're leading this meeting. So yeah, but it was
But
all good though.
I
Yeah,
think part of that is like you're forming your own life, for a lack of a better term, and part of that is that your personality, your views, and it's part of that. Like some as men, you have to lead the home, and there's an aspect
yeah,
to that where sometimes you have to say no because you prefer things done a better way or there's a better solution. It's not
yeah.
to discredit anyone, which I know for you it's not, and that's just part of
Hmm.
when you lead your home. Sometimes you're gonna have to say no. No, we're not gonna do it that way.
Yeah,
It's like your
and
dad growing up when your dad was leading news, like there was certain things, no, we're not gonna watch those movies
exactly.
because such and such, and then as you grow up, you realize, that's because he said that when he was young. Now I understand why, because he was protecting me from A, B, C, D, you
Yeah,
know?
exactly. And he's even like they've taught me so much about that. Like, yeah, sometimes you might see that there is a better way, and sometimes it's so clear that it's a better way. Now,
Mm,
there are times where you just have to say no, and
sure.
like there's no way you're doing that, like for like literal protection or because like it's going against God's word and God Himself. But there are times too, like that's part of leadership too, is sometimes you have to bring people on a journey
Mm,
and let them see why that doesn't work. Maybe let them figure it out themselves. And when they realize that, then you point them another direction
yeah,
and then you just kind of lead them until yeah, just to get better and better and improving themselves and leading the team
yeah,
to the point where where you know it should go, but sometimes you can't just tell them, no, this is the way we're going, because you can discourage people too. And they'll be like, oh, I don't really want to work under that person. But
yeah,
if you let people express their opinions and yeah, you let people or you make people feel important and stuff like that, and their views are important to you and opinions too and ideas
yeah,
that that helps the team even better than your idea, which in the moment could be right, but there are better ways too, and people have better ideas than you sometimes as well. So
sure.
that's one thing that they've taught me as well, even with leadership and even like with moments like that when I say no to my dad. Yeah.
That's hilarious just to see how everyone's like,
Yeah. They're like, I can't
pastor.
believe he just said no to Pastor Stephen.
Yeah, what?
Yeah.
How do you do that? That's so.
Yeah, yeah,
I'd love to actually be there, just be like, Ronan, my G.
yeah.
But I'm sure you've heard the saying, like, like father, like son, or you know, you're 50% your mom, 50% your dad. And I suppose what people are trying to say there is that there's part of your life or there's part of your character or personality that maybe comes from mom or dad or maybe both. Or I want to ask you a question, man. What are some of the things that your mom and dad have instilled in you that you would say are part of your life today? Is there a particular personality quality or something, some experience where you took on board what mom said or
Um, yeah, I think there's a few things. I think one of the things I've definitely got is like my dad's cringy jokes.
okay,
I think I'm really funny, but other people maybe don't find me as funny, or they think like some of my jokes are cringy. So I think I got that from my dad on the lighter side of things. But then also one of the things I think they really instilled with me was like love for people
mm,
and just how you love people too. Like one of the things that I really admire about my parents is I just think they're like one of the best hosts. Like we've had like so many guests in our home, so
yeah,
many random people staying with us. And yeah, we've just opened our home to a lot of people and just how they host people, I think is so nice. Like I think that's one of the things that I've definitely picked up on. And I
yeah,
always rub it in Natasha's face too sometimes that I'm clearly the better host.
wow,
But yeah, nah. But yeah, that's one thing though. Just yeah, I just love the way that they host people and just how they make people feel really important and how they care for people and just how they look after people too. And yeah, just how they go above and beyond for people. I think
yeah,
that's one thing. And just, yeah, the generosity and kindness. Because we didn't always have much, like growing up, but
yeah,
we were always, like, my parents were always kind to people and would always give of their time and sometimes of their resources too.
yeah,
And yeah, I think that's one thing that they've definitely instilled in me is just how to love on people and how to make people feel important too. And
yeah,
just yeah, I just show the love of Jesus to people. I think that's definitely one of the things, one of the major things I think they've instilled in me anyway. Yeah.
yeah. That's awesome. And you know, man, as a way to close out the podcast episode, I want to ask maybe is there some sort of encouragement that you would give parents? Um, not as someone who knows it all, but someone who has been a kid under your parents' instructions, how they raised you, you know, because obviously there's massive challenges for parenting in today's world. How would you encourage maybe a parent listening to this who feels a little bit discouraged or frustrated that maybe the things they're trying to instill in their kids are taking longer than they would want, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I think one of the things, or a few of the things that this is coming from someone who doesn't have kids or knows nothing about raising kids. But
Sure.
this is like my best thing I would give. I think to parents, I would be like, yeah, never give up on praying for your kids.
Mm,
Like, yeah, just even if you don't see the results or they're taking a long time, don't give up on that. Keep praying for them and keep pushing through for them and just keep believing God for it because He will come through.
yeah.
And then also another thing, like, yeah, keep reading the word to them, even if they don't want to hear it or they don't want to sit down, keep pushing through and yeah, keep almost forcing it too,
Yeah.
I would say too, because there was many times that I didn't want to read the Bible with them, but they were like, nope, come on, let's sit down and read it. So even stuff like that. And also, yeah, don't be scared to say no to them or be strict on like certain games that they play or music that they listen to or
Sure.
even what they watch as well because it has huge impact. Like I think even yeah, more than people know and I've
Yeah.
even seen it too. Like yeah, so I think that's one good thing is yeah, don't be afraid to be strict, especially on the content that you allow in your home
Yeah.
and even like mobile devices too. I think for anyone with boys, don't let them bring their phone into their room. Keep it out at night.
Yeah.
S yeah, I think that was something that was really good that my parents did. It's something that I definitely want to do too.
Yeah.
And another thing too, yeah, yeah, keep encouraging your kids, keep loving on them, and yeah, just always point them back to Jesus and what God says about them in the Word, and because in the Bible there's an answer to all of life's questions, I think, in there.
Yeah.
So whatever you're dealing with your kids or whatever your kids are going through or struggling with, there's an answer in the word. So yeah,
Yeah.
keep reading the word and keep pointing them back to Jesus and keep praying for them. Yeah. And keep encouraging them too. And yeah, and then one more thing too. Yeah, if they don't want to go to youth, push them to go to youth and
Yeah.
kids club
Sure.
because it is worth it. And yeah, it is life changing for your kids. And yeah, even if, yeah, the last thing that you want to do on a Friday night is drive them into youth or pick them up, do it because, yeah, it will have a massive impact on your kid's life. And yeah,
Yeah.
it's really important too. So yeah, that's my, yeah, things that I would suggest to
Yeah.
do for parents.
And
Yeah.
what you've said there, man, you've said quite a few. And I suppose to sum it up this way, what you've said is you're basically encouraging parents about the importance of investing in their kids' future by
Hmm.
putting maybe restrictions or safeguards in place now because the internet is a wild place, which is why it's important to have controls on it, blocks for certain sites, which I do on all my devices. So I can stop, even as an
Hmm.
adult myself, I have those devices in place because it's a dangerous world out there. And one click
Yeah.
can lead you down a rabbit trail or about the importance of bringing your kids into youth on a Friday. Yeah, they're tired. Everyone's tired. There's not a day I've
Hmm.
woke up in my life where I don't feel tired.
Yeah.
Just life is just tiring, and it's the importance of that about the parent leading the home and saying, as you said, I think it's important that you said that saying no.
Hmm.
And it can seem like a dangerous word, but it's an important word because that no is not rejection, it's protection.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
oftentimes with kids, because I was a kid myself, and every time my mom and dad, if my mom said no, I would go to my dad, hoping my dad would say yes. And then my dad
Yeah.
would say no. And I was thinking, my goodness, I
Or
feel like,
they say, ask your mom, and then you're like, oh, she already said no.
yeah. It's like, oh, I can't get around mom, can't get around dad. I'm
Yeah.
snookered. But it's just, I look back and I'm thankful that mom and dad said no to me on so many different occasions where I thought I was missing out on everything. And I wasn't missing out on anything.
No,
And then you grow up
not
and you
at all.
realize, it's weird because you start seeing a bit of your parents in yourself, and it's
Hmm.
actually it's a crazy thing to see. Like
Yeah.
I think I get a lot of my bluntness or my ability to speak or whatever from dad. Dad would leave.
Hmm.
Whereas then I've got that side of me that I would like to think is quite caring, and I get a lot of that from my mom because naturally moms
Hmm.
are naturally more nurturing, caring, and so on. And I just want I suppose I want the parents or anyone listening to this who's hoping to be a parent in the future to be encouraged that although it may feel tiring and a lot of pressure and frustrating at times, you're actually investing in your kids' future. You're actually
Yeah.
setting your kids up for success in the future, even if you or they don't see it right now when they're in their teenage years or their younger years and they're going through a bad patch. You're still the mom, you're still the dad. If problems are sometimes so big for us that well, most of the time they're too big for us anyway, which is why we have a
Hmm.
wonderful privilege of being able to hand them over to the Almighty One, who is the Lord Himself. That we commit our kids into His hands in the future in Jesus' name for me and you, right? And
Amen.
trusting that he will make all things right in his time. And
Hmm.
you know what, man, I just want to say this has been a really good podcast episode because I think it speaks to us as people who still have to honor and respect our parents, but I also believe that for the parents, hopefully it will be some sort of a lifeline or a help, or maybe it'll just be like a Timothy ministry, just a ministry of encouragement to come alongside them, and just bless them in that way. But I want to thank you, man, for giving up some time just to hop on and chat about a topic that we haven't really spoken about too much in person, but it was nice to dive into it on
Hmm.
the podcast.
Yeah, no, thank you. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. Yeah, I really hope that, yeah, it blesses people too and encourages them to keep going and, yeah, to not give up as well, because it's worth it. It really is. Yeah.
Absolutely. Totally agree, man.
Mhm.
And for those of you that are still listening, thank you for tuning in. Do us a favor though. maybe you have a parent and maybe you're older now and you're like myself and Ronan, you're in your adult years, and why not send this to your parents and just ask them to listen to it as a way to bless them and encourage them and as a way to say thank you for their impact, because oftentimes
Mm.
parenting can be such a thankless job, especially when you're in your younger years. When you're younger, you think you know everything, and then when you become an
Mm-hmm.
adult, you realize you know nothing. So
Yeah,
there's a lot of
very
unlearning that
true.
has to happen. So why not send it to mom, dad, your grandparents, uncles, anyone who would have had a that parent-like figure in your life. Maybe it's a pastor or a leader in your church, and just say thank you to them for the impact they've had in your life. But till next week, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And remember, the hope is to life as oxygen is to the body. Take care. God bless. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Hope Sessions podcast. Did you enjoy the episode? Maybe did it encourage you or motivate you? Do you think there's someone in your life could benefit or be blessed by this episode? If so, then why not send it to them? Lastly, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform you use. This massively helps to spread the podcast literally all across the world. And don't forget, the hope is to life as oxygen is to the body. God bless you and have a wonderful week. Take care.